Hello Hell is the first track on the record. It sort of sets the stage and introduces the character that I think we all can relate to, that is made crazy by an incessant mental chattering that is constantly overanalyzing, berating, alienating our character. It also features a clip from UHF. The greatest movie of all time. I'll say it. Toxic and Fragile is a song that takes on the character of somebody who is so devoid of love that kind of turns them into a jerk. Someone who feels really entitled to people's attention and affection. The title of the song, Toxic and Fragile, is alluding to, toxic masculinity, fragile masculinity. This is a character that I don't agree with, but nonetheless floats around in my brain sometimes. And I find that writing songs to allow those characters to express themselves even when I disagree with them can kind of help me work some of that stuff out. Plus, there's a good horn section. Sick Sixth Sense is a song that deals with when you kind of are starting to recognize that maybe what's happening in your head and also what's happening in your environment is not the most healthy, but you still feel powerless to do anything about it. You don't have the tools or the resources or the, status to change that, and how recognizing that things are wrong and feeling like you can't change them can make you freak out. Après moi la déluge is a French phrase that means after me the flood, meaning kind of whatever happens after I'm gone, doesn't matter, I won't be there to experience it. So this is a song that sort of grapples with that ideology, especially as it relates to the climate crisis, but kind of just at large, seeing the absurdity and the horror of the situation that we're in and responding to that by saying kind of, fuck it. But a Tiny Tim part too at the end. What the fuck would Jesus do? This is a song about how the words and ethics of messianic figures or religious ideologies can be twisted and warped to take the shape of really anything. I think specifically about imperialist and colonial powers, and how we all kind of project retroactively our own beliefs onto figures like Jesus. And then I go ahead in the song and do that very same thing about my own life, about how, look at me, I'm just like Jesus too. I'm traveling around telling people about the end of the world and living in poverty and conspiring with a bunch of bums around the campfire, just like Jesus did. So it's sort of a little self-aware way of saying, look, I'm just like Jesus too, and so can you. Jesus Christ and Diogenes Walk Into a Bar is a song about ideology in general, how it unconsciously shapes who we are and how we think and behave. Diogenes, if you're not familiar, was an ancient Stoic philosopher who was also kind of a home bum. He lived in a barrel in town and had no earthly possessions. And he had a lot of really good kind of subversive lines and behaviors, and some of those show up in the song. It's also about just like seeking some kind of understanding your finality and maybe not getting it. I don't, some songs you write and you don't know what they're entirely about, and I think that that's perfectly fine too. The song Impermanence is the title track of the record, and I think for good reason. It's about being afraid of dying, both individual death and also just, the collapse of civilization or the extinction of the species or other species. I think it also really grapples with as the situation becomes more dire and resources become more scarce, being good at singing folk songs to people might not be the most useful skill set to have when violence and power rule the day. It's also got a really trippy bridge part. Zen Tanks is a song about letting go, feeling like you're gonna understand anything, letting go of any sort of expectation, and that's a really shaky, frightening experience. It gets the scariest song on the album because it's really about this sort of place of not knowing and accepting that you're never really gonna be certain. Yeah, it's a weird one. Fake Embrace is a song about kind of acceptance and just like coming to terms, I think, with things. Sort of letting it all wash over you and trying to remain a little equanimous with it all, be able to kind of internalize it without reacting too much. No Thing is a song, it's the song that I have written longest ago on the record, so it's the oldest song on the album, and it's about, I think, trying to grasp on to an emptiness, and then coming to sort of revere that emptiness as meaningful on its own, which is a little goofy to try to articulate, and maybe that's why, maybe this song is about how it's all hard to articulate sometimes, and that words come up short and concepts come up short a lot of the time. I think that's what this song is driving at. There's another one that's a little bit mysterious to me, but I think it sounds sick. Indifference is the last lyrical song on the album, and I don't think it claims to come to any definite conclusions about anything, but hopefully it conveys the idea that even though we are doomed or feel doomed, or even though the situation is bleak, the act of connecting with others and being open, the act of loving and being loved is a redemptive act, despite the kind of futile nature of the situation we find ourselves in. It's also kind of about, like, if there is a God, it's probably like the Coen brothers God that is so all-encompassing and without any understanding of judgment or morality that it kind of becomes a liberatory indifference. Memento Mori is the final song on the album. It's an instrumental track that has some clips from a trippy sci-fi movie called The Last and First Men.
Triumphant love.
And I wrote this together. It's produced years ago. And it's kind of melancholy and beautiful, and it just felt like a really perfect ending.
In spite of everything.
Make you feel like
love.